I was 62 years old the first time I realized my son did not care if I lived or died. The realization didn't come during a screaming match or a dramatic family intervention. It came on a random Tuesday morning at 5:30 a.m. while I was lying on the freezing hardwood floor of my own hallway clutching my right knee. I had slipped on a throw rug on my way to the kitchen. The pain was blinding sharp enough to make my vision blur. I couldn't put any weight on my leg to stand up. My son David and his wife Sarah lived with me. They had the entire upstairs of my 4-bedroom house. I dragged myself to the bottom of the staircase, gritting my teeth, and called out for him. It took 10 minutes for David to finally come downstairs, wearing his expensive silk pajamas, holding a cup of coffee he had just brewed upstairs in their personal Keurig. He stared down at me. I was sweating, breathing heavily. "I think my knee is out of place," I managed to say. "I can't drive. I need you to take me to the urgent care clinic down the street." David sighed, looking at his Apple Watch. "Sarah and I have a morning spin class in 20 minutes, Mom. And then I have a breakfast meeting." "David, I can't walk," I reminded him, my voice steady despite the throbbing pain. My son looked at me when I needed his help, took a slow sip of his coffee, and coldly said, "Not my problem. Figure it out." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't remind him that he was standing in the house I paid for. I simply looked back at his annoyed expression, nodded once, and said, "Okay." I watched him walk out the front door. Then I pulled my phone from my robe pocket, called a ride share, and began making a quiet, permanent plan. To understand how we got to that morning on the floor, you have to understand the last 2 years of my life. After my husband passed away, the house felt too big. David and Sarah were renting a luxury apartment downtown and complaining about how they could never afford a down payment for a house of their own. I offered them the upstairs bedrooms. The agreement was simple. They would save their money help with the utilities and stay for a year. That was 24 months ago. The saving never happened. Instead, packages arrived daily. Designer shoes, golf clubs, expensive meal kit deliveries. Meanwhile, my electric bill doubled. My water bill tripled. I was the one buying the groceries, cooking the dinners, and quietly picking up the slack. Sarah had slowly started treating me like a live-in maid. She would leave her dirty dishes in the sink overnight, expecting them to be clean by morning. She started rearranging my living room furniture because the original layout didn't fit her aesthetic. I let it slide at first. I wanted peace in my home. I wanted a relationship with my son. But sitting in the waiting room of the urgent care clinic with my knee wrapped tightly in an ACE bandage, the fog cleared. The doctor told me it was a severe sprain and I needed to stay off it for a week. I paid my copay with my own credit card. I ordered another ride share to get back to my house. When I unlocked the front door and hobbled inside on crutches, the house was empty. They were at work. But on the kitchen counter sat a sticky note in Sarah's handwriting. "Mom, don't forget to sign for my package today. And please run the dishwasher." I stared at the note. I didn't rip it up. I just smiled, crumpled it, and tossed it into the trash. The era of me being a convenience was officially over. 3 days after my fall, I was sitting at the kitchen table, resting my leg on a chair. I had stopped doing their laundry. 2 baskets of their clothes were overflowing in the laundry room. David and Sarah came downstairs for dinner, expecting the usual spread. Instead, they found me eating a simple bowl of soup I had warmed up just for myself. Sarah frowned, opening the refrigerator. "Where is the chicken?" "Weren't you making roasted chicken tonight?" "I didn't feel like cooking," I replied, not looking up from my magazine. Sarah huffed and shut the fridge. She sat across from me, exchanging a glance with David. "Actually, Lorraine, since we're all here, David and I wanted to talk to you about the house." I turned a page. "Go ahead." "Well," David started clearing his throat. "We were thinking, you don't really need the master bedroom on the first floor anymore. It's huge. And with my knee acting up, sometimes stairs are getting annoying. Plus, Sarah needs an office space. We think it makes more sense for you to move into the sunroom at the back, and we take the master suite. The sunroom. A tiny, drafty space with no attached bathroom and barely enough room for a twin bed. They wanted to push me into a glorified closet in my own home, the home my husband and I had spent 30 years paying off. I looked at David. I searched his face for any sign of shame, any hint of hesitation. There was none. He just looked entitled. The sunroom, I repeated slowly. It gets great light. Sarah chimed in, smiling brightly as if she were doing me a favor. I didn't yell. I didn't call them ungrateful. I just took a slow sip of my water, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and nodded. I'll take it under consideration. They beamed, thinking they had won. They didn't realize I was already drafting an eviction of a different kind. The very next morning while they were at work, I drove myself to the bank. My knee was aching, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. When David and Sarah first moved in, we set up a joint checking account. The deal was that they would deposit $500 a month into it to cover their share of the groceries, internet, and utilities, and I would manage the payments. For the first 3 months, they deposited the money. For the last 21 months, they hadn't put in a dime. I had been quietly funding the entire account myself from my pension, avoiding the conflict. I sat down with a teller. I need to withdraw the entire balance of this joint account and close it, I instructed. Certainly, Mrs. Hawkins. The teller smiled. I moved every single dollar into my private account. My next stop was the local hardware store. I bought a heavy-duty padlock and a new doorknob with a keypad lock. When I got home, I didn't touch the sunroom. Instead, I installed the new keypad lock on the door to my master bedroom. Then I went to the garage. David had turned half of my garage into his personal man cave, complete with a massive smart TV, an expensive gaming console, and his collection of vintage sneakers. I walked out, pulled the heavy garage door shut, and snapped the thick padlock into place on the exterior latch. I slipped the only key onto my personal keychain. Finally, I sat at my computer. I logged into my internet service provider's website. The account was in my name, paid by my credit card. I changed the Wi-Fi network name from Hawkins Home to Offline, and I generated a complex, randomized 20-character password. I printed out the new password on a tiny slip of paper, folded it into my pocket, and made myself a cup of tea. The infrastructure of their comfort was officially dismantled. At 6:15 p.m., the front door opened. I was sitting in the living room reading a book. David and Sarah walked in laughing about something. They dropped their bags on the sofa and headed straight for the kitchen. A minute later, Sarah's voice echoed out. Lorraine, there's literally nothing in the fridge but condiments and a carton of eggs. I know, I called back. I didn't go shopping. In truth, I had bought a mini fridge for my master bedroom and stocked it with my own food. David walked into the living room holding his phone up. He looked frustrated. Mom, did you mess with the router? The Wi-Fi is completely gone. I need to upload some files for work. I closed my book and placed it on the side table. I changed the network and the password. David let out an exasperated sigh. Okay. Well, what's the new password? I'm not sharing it, I said calmly. He stared at me, blinking as if I had just spoken a foreign language. What do you mean you're not sharing it? We live here. You reside here, I corrected him gently. But the internet is in my name and I pay for it. Since neither of you have contributed to the household account in nearly 2 years, I decided to cut back on my expenses. You'll need to set up your own hotspot. Sarah marched into the room, her hands on her hips. Are you serious right now? You're being incredibly petty just because we suggested you move to the sunroom. I'm not being petty, Sarah, I replied, keeping my voice entirely even. I am simply managing my finances, just like David managed his time when I was on the floor with a sprained knee. David flushed red. Are you still mad about that? I told you I had a meeting. I didn't answer. I just stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked away, leaving them standing in a quiet, internet-free house. The next day was Saturday. I woke up at my usual time, made my coffee, and sat on the back patio. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Around 10 o'clock, I heard heavy footsteps stomping down the stairs, followed by the sound of the garage door rattling violently. A moment later, David shoved the patio door open. He looked furious. Mom, where is the key to the garage? It's on my keychain. I answered, not looking up from the crossword puzzle I was working on. Unlock it. Now, he demanded. My golf clubs are in there and I have a tea time with my boss in 40 minutes. I'm using the garage for storage right now, I said mildly. It's going to stay locked. Sarah appeared behind him, her face tight with anger. Lorraine, this is ridiculous. You can't lock us out of parts of the house. We have rights. I finally looked up. I set my pen down. What rights, Sarah? You don't have a lease. You don't pay rent. You don't pay for water, electricity, or gas. You are guests in my home, and you have overstayed your welcome. David ran a hand through his hair, pacing. Mom, stop acting crazy. Just give me the key. If I miss this golf game, it's going to look terrible for me at work. I looked at my son. I thought about the pain radiating up my leg days earlier and his cold, dismissive eyes. Not my problem, I said clearly. Figure it out. David froze. He recognized his own words immediately. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked at Sarah, hoping she would jump in, but she was busy glaring at me. Fine, David snapped, grabbing his car keys from the counter. I'll rent clubs at the course. We'll deal with this later. He stormed out. Sarah stayed behind, staring at me with narrow eyes. You think you're so smart, she muttered. She didn't know I was just getting started. When they finally returned that evening, the house was dark. I had unscrewed the light bulbs in the hallway and living room lamps, leaving only the kitchen overhead light on. They walked in, fumbling in the shadows. What is going on with the lights? Sarah complained loudly, dropping her purse on the counter. I was sitting at the kitchen island. In front of me was a neat stack of papers. Take a seat, I said. David looked exhausted from his golf game. He pulled out a stool and sat heavily. Sarah remained standing, arms crossed defensively. I pushed a single sheet of paper across the granite counter toward David. This is an itemized list. He frowned, picking it up. A list of what? Your expenses over the last 24 months, I explained calmly. I calculated the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in this neighborhood. I added your half of the water, electricity, gas, and internet. I also included the estimated cost of groceries I have purchased for the two of you since you stopped depositing money into the joint account. David's eyes widened as he read the number at the bottom of the page. It was substantial. Tens of thousands of dollars. This is insane, Sarah scoffed, snatching the paper from him. We are family. You don't charge family for living in your house. You stopped acting like family the moment you treated me like a burden in my own home, I replied. I reached over and tapped the bottom of the paper. I am not asking you to pay this back. Consider it my final gift to you. David looked relieved for a split second until I slid the second piece of paper across the counter. This, I continued, is a 30-day notice to vacate the premises. You have exactly 1 month to find a new place to live, pack your belongings, and leave. David stared at the paper. You're kicking us out. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at him without an ounce of pity. That is entirely up to you. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of drilling. I quickly threw on my robe and walked out into the hallway. Sarah was standing by the front door, holding a power drill, while a strange man was installing a brand new deadbolt on my front door. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharp. Sarah turned, looking incredibly smug. "Since you want to play games with locks on the garage, David and I decided we need to secure our own safety. We're changing the front door lock. Don't worry, we'll give you a key." She was trying to establish dominance. She was trying to make me feel like a tenant in my own home. I didn't shout. I didn't try to physically stop the locksmith. I just walked back into my bedroom and picked up my phone. I didn't call the police. I didn't need to. I called the local power company. "Hello, this is Lorraine Hawkins," I said, when the representative answered. "I need to schedule a temporary shutoff for my electricity for some major electrical renovations, starting tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m. Next, I called the water company and made the exact same request. When I walked back out to the kitchen, Sarah was holding a shiny new silver key. She tossed it onto the counter toward me. "There you go, Lorraine. Try not to lose it." I looked at the key, then looked at her. "Keep it," I said softly. I spent the rest of the day packing my essentials into 2 large suitcases. I booked a beautiful quiet room at a bed and breakfast a few towns over. I paid for a week in advance. By the time David and Sarah went to bed that night, oblivious in the upstairs suite, my bags were already loaded into the trunk of my car. I was simply waiting for the sun to rise. I left the house at 7:00 a.m. I locked the new deadbolt behind me, got into my car, and drove away. At exactly 8:00 a.m., my phone buzzed with a confirmation text. The power and water at my address had been successfully disconnected. I checked into my charming room at the bed, and breakfast unpacked my things and sat on the balcony with a hot cup of tea. Then I turned my phone on silent, placed it in the drawer of the nightstand, and spent the entire day reading, walking through the gardens, and enjoying the utter silence. I slept better that night than I had in 2 years. The next day around noon, I finally opened the drawer and looked at my screen. 30 missed calls. All from David. A dozen text messages from Sarah. "Mom, the power is out. Mom, the water isn't working. I can't shower. Where are you? Did you pay the bills? David's phone is dying. We can't get the garage open to get his car out." I didn't rush to reply. I calmly listened to the final voicemail David had left. His voice was frantic, lacking all the arrogance from a few days prior. "Mom, please pick up. The house is freezing. The food in the fridge is going bad. I have to go to work, and I smell like sweat because I can't shower. Call me back, please. We need you to fix this." He needed me to fix it, just like he had needed me to cook clean and fund his lifestyle. I listened to the message twice. I felt no guilt, only a profound sense of clarity. I poured myself a second cup of tea, sat back in the comfortable armchair, and finally tapped his name on my screen to return the call. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, oh my God, where are you? The house is completely dead. Did you forget to pay the utility bills?" "I didn't forget David," I said, my voice relaxed. "I had them shut off." There was a dead silence on the line. "You? What? Why?" "Because I am doing renovations," I told him. "And because I don't pay to provide comfort for people who treat me poorly in my own home." "Mom, you can't do this," he practically yelled. "We live here. How are we supposed to shower? How are we supposed to cook or charge our phones?" "I gave you a 30-day notice," I reminded him gently. "You have 28 days left to move out. How you survive those days without water and power is entirely up to you." I will turn them back on the day you hand your keys back to me and remove your belongings." "You're acting crazy," David sputtered. "You're our mother. I agreed. "But I am no longer your safety net." I hung up the phone. I didn't block him, but I didn't answer his subsequent calls either. 3 days later, I received a text from him. "We found an apartment. We are moving our stuff out today. Just turn the power back on, please." I drove back to the house that evening. The moving truck was just pulling away. Inside, the upstairs was empty. They had left a mess, but I didn't care. I stood in the quiet, dark hallway where I had fallen. I made 2 phone calls to restore the utilities, and a third to a contractor to begin converting the upstairs into a beautiful art studio. I never received an apology, and I never asked for one. I kept my money, I kept my house, and most importantly, I kept my dignity. I didn't share this story to tell anyone how to run their family or to pretend I handled everything perfectly. But sitting alone on that balcony, looking out at the gardens, taught me a lesson I wish I had learned decades earlier. Peace is expensive, and sometimes the price is letting go of your own guilt. As parents, we are conditioned to give everything to our kids, even at the cost of our own dignity. We think enduring it is a sign of love. But the hard truth is, you can't teach someone respect by quietly accepting their disrespect. Putting a lock on my door didn't make me a bad mother. It just meant I finally remembered my own worth. If you've ever had to draw a hard boundary with someone you love, you know how lonely and heavy it can feel. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How would you have handled David and Sarah? Would you have done things differently? If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more real, unfiltered stories about life, standing your ground, and finding your peace. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.